So we're looking at auditing sponsors and CROs. So we're going to look at the FDA's Compliance Program Guidance Manual, which I know you're familiar with, 7348.810, updated last April to incorporate information on the final rule for registration of our studies on clinicaltrials.gov as applicable studies. So what we're going to talk about today, however, is look at the new regulatory requirements and processes and how they are integrated into the assessments that the FDA puts forth. Translate inspection criteria to quality systems that support changes in the inspection focus, so why the FDA is looking at certain things more than others. Look at the FDA's application of the Compliance Program Guidance Manual as reflected in regulatory communication, and also talk about how we as a sponsor or a CRO can prepare for an FDA inspection by using the tools that they will use when they come and do those inspections. So we have to think about auditing. So we're going to really focus on certainly how the FDA does their inspection, but we audit this way. We audit to what the FDA expects. It's what they inspect. So we're auditing to ensure the integrity of our clinical data and that the individuals from whom we have gathered that data have been protected, that their rights, safety, and welfare have been protected within the processes of collecting and reporting and analyzing, monitoring, and auditing that data. We as auditors are just as responsible as any other clinical team member, clinical research team member, to ensure that we have quality and compliance in how we approach things. What's important to think about is when you're actually preparing. When are you doing your audits? So are you doing pre-qualification audits for your vendors? Are you doing internal audits? So when are you doing those to assess what's happening within your own internal systems and processes that are taking place? Are you doing them in process, in the middle of your programs and your protocols? Are you looking at things after the fact, really taking in information that you discovered during the course of your engagements and putting it back into your internal processes, building that quality in? And this includes from what you do as a sponsor, a CRO, but also what you're requiring of your other vendors, like your labs and your IRBs and your CROs and your investigators. So when we audit is important. We can do those pre-qualification, as we said, get a sense of what we might be running into. I have worked with plenty of sponsors and CROs that have vendors. They don't even know, they don't have a complete list of vendors. They have not done pre-qualification assessments or any qualification assessments. So oftentimes I'll get asked to go in and do audits, a qualification audit, after the study's 2 years underway. So we have to think about how we can better assess risk. We know ICH E6 was updated to include in Section 5 quality management, requiring that sponsors think about risk and implement procedures to minimize that risk. So are we assessing things beforehand? Are we identifying and mitigating that risk beforehand? Are we going out and doing those in-process and real-time audits? So this is something that's critical too, to get a sense of where you are. This is going to vary based on your programs, the stage of your research, and as I mentioned, those internal audits. I guarantee you as an auditor, when we go out and we find things at a site, for example, or a vendor, it's going to point back, some of it's going to point back on the sponsor. I strongly encourage folks when we do these types of audits to take those findings and look internally. If we think about that 13th principle of ICH E6 GCP, systems that ensure quality of every aspect of the study should be implemented with particular focus on those risks that impact subjects' rights, safety, and welfare, and the integrity of your data. Know what's going on. It is a sponsor responsibility per the regulations, not a data management or a clinical operations or a supply responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility. Understand how you are working and if there's a way to do things better. So how does timing impact our ability to make assessments? As we said, those pre-qualification audits allow you to go in and get a sense of whether those systems and subsystems are in place and functional. We don't yet have data. We might have a history with these folks, but we don't have data in terms of, can I plug this in and say, yeah, you're following this particular protocol or you're following this particular contract. But we can go in and understand, hey, this is what our protocol is going to require. This is what we're contracting to you. Let's go and see if you have the support in place to be able to meet those regulatory obligations. So I have done mock inspections, meaning we're right at the end, waiting for the FDA to come, done mock inspections of sponsors, and realized that they didn't have the most current version of the CRO SOP table of contents. So requesting that and getting it was able to show the sponsor that, hey, you contracted with a CRO that didn't even have SOPs in place to govern the conduct and oversight of the tasks that you delegated to them contractually. It's important that we understand whose SOPs we're going to be following, keep track of those SOPs, review them, make sure you're aware of any updates to those. You can assess policies. Are you structured to be capable of doing a compliant job? But an in-process audit allows us to evaluate and review processes. What are you actually doing? And certainly as auditors, we see this. We are told one thing, and you get something else. You see this as a sponsor. Or you might think that you're doing one thing, and somehow it gets changed. And that's not what you expected.